How do you stay calm at your own child's wedding when you suddenly learn she is asking for help? Why would a bride risk everything to pass her father a secret note during a public dance? Can a quiet man fix a loud, powerful problem without breaking a single rule? My name is Tom Reyes. I am 58 years old. I work in compliance at a regional bank. My job is to notice patterns and stay calm when other people get loud. That habit followed me into the ballroom on my daughter's wedding day. The wedding was in a luxury hotel downtown. The lobby smelled like fresh flowers and polished stone. The staff moved fast and quiet, like they were trained to avoid mistakes. I arrived early because I wanted to help. I also wanted a few minutes alone with my daughter before the crowd surrounded her. At the front desk, a woman asked for my name and checked a tablet. Her smile stayed, but her eyes changed. She told me where to go and reminded me the schedule was tight. It sounded friendly, but it felt like a warning. I nodded and thanked her. Outside the ballroom, a coordinator with a headset stepped in front of me. She told me the family was being managed carefully and that I should wait for my cue. I said I understood. I did not argue. I looked around instead. People in expensive clothes were already taking photos near a wall of flowers. A large screen played a slideshow of my daughter Lena and her new husband, Ashton Vale. The captions talked about success, travel, and destiny. The whole thing was designed to make the room believe this match was flawless. I walked toward the area where the bridal party was gathering. I expected to see Lena, even for a second. Instead, another staff member redirected me and said the bridal room was closed until a certain time. I watched other people go in and out. They were not stopped. I was. It was done politely, which made it harder to challenge without looking like the problem. My ex-wife, Sandra, found me near the drinks table. She was glowing with pride and nerves. She told me this was a big day and that I needed to keep everything smooth. She said Ashton's family cared deeply about image. She told me I should not take anything personally. I told her I was not there to fight. I was there for Lena. Then I noticed how conversations worked around me. Guests asked me what it was like to meet Ashton. They told me he was impressive. They said Lena was lucky. They spoke as if Lena had been promoted into a higher world, and my role was to clap from the side. I answered with short, calm words. I did not feed the energy. Ashton's mother, Marisol, moved through the room like she owned the air. She greeted people with warmth that felt practiced. She introduced donors and investors to each other. She smiled at me once and thanked me for coming, as if I was a guest at my own child's wedding. I returned the smile and said I was happy to be there. When family photos started, the photographer arranged people in a neat pattern. Marisol and Ashton were placed near the center. Sandra was brought close, like she had been approved. I was guided to the end of the line, near the edge of the frame. No one said it was intentional. No one had to. The message was clear. I finally saw Lena when the ceremony was about to begin. She stepped into view in her dress, perfect hair, perfect makeup. People reacted like they were watching a scene from a movie. Cameras lifted. Lena smiled, but her shoulders were tight. Her eyes scanned the room, not for joy, but for signals. I have seen people do that when they feel watched. Ashton took her hand and spoke to her with a soft expression. From far away, it looked tender. Up close, it looked like direction. Lena nodded quickly, then lifted her smile again as people looked over. The ceremony itself went smoothly. That was the point. The room wanted a clean story. I watched my daughter say her vows. I watched Ashton say his. I listened to applause that sounded like approval of a brand, not a relationship. I kept my face calm. Inside, I felt a slow pressure building, like a question that did not yet have words. At the reception, the microphone moved from person to person. Marisol spoke first. She praised the match and talked about values and legacy. Then an older man on Ashton's side spoke about the future. Then a friend made people laugh with safe jokes. I waited for a chance to say even a few lines as Lena's father. No one offered it. I did not ask. I just noted it. A guest I barely knew approached me and said I must be proud. Then he added that Ashton had really changed Lena's life. He said it like Lena's old life had been small and needed saving. I told him I was proud of Lena because she was smart and kind. The man nodded, satisfied, and walked away. Then the father-daughter dance was announced. For the first time that day, people looked at me as if I was useful to the event. I stood and adjusted my jacket. I walked toward Lena. She placed her hand in mine, light and careful. The music was soft, the lighting was warm, cameras rose again. I kept my posture steady and moved slowly. I told Lena she looked beautiful. She gave a small smile. It was the same smile she had been wearing all day. I asked if she was okay. She nodded, but her eyes did not match the nod. Her grip on my hand was tight. She moved like someone counting steps. Halfway through the dance, she shifted closer, like she was simply adjusting for the turn. I felt something slide into the inside pocket of my coat. It was small, flat, and firm, like folded paper wrapped in a thin layer. Lena did not look down. She did not change her expression. She continued to move with me as if nothing had happened. In my line of work, I learned that the most important signals are the quiet ones. I did not pat the pocket. I did not react. I kept my face calm and finished the dance as if everything was normal. When the song ended, people clapped. Lena stepped back. For a brief second, her eyes met mine without the practiced smile. There was fear there, not drama, not attention-seeking, just fear. I waited until the crowd shifted. Then I moved toward a quieter space near the hallway outside the ballroom. I kept my pace normal. I did not rush. I did not want anyone to notice a change in me. In the hallway, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the packet. My hands did not shake, but my stomach tightened. I unfolded it carefully. Inside was a short note. It said she needed me to rescue her. I stood still for a moment. The hotel sounds faded into a dull hum. I looked at the words again to make sure my mind was not filling in something that was not there. The message was clear, simple, and urgent. I folded the note back the same way. I placed it into the packet and slid it into my inner pocket again. I took one slow breath. Then I returned to the edge of the ballroom, calm on the outside and fully awake on the inside. After the dance, I stayed in the room like nothing changed. I did not want anyone to see my face shift. In a crowded place, one wrong look becomes a story. And that day, stories belonged to Ashton's family, not to me. I waited until the reception moved into its usual noise. People stood, laughed, and walked between tables. I found a moment to slip out and go home. I told Sandra I was tired and needed air. She looked annoyed for a second, then told me to be careful and not make things complicated. I said I understood. I said I would call her later. At home, my kitchen felt quiet in a way that almost hurt. The light above the sink buzzed like it always did. I put my keys in the same bowl I always used. Then I took the packet out of my coat and placed it on the table like it was fragile. I read the note again. The words were short, but they carried weight. I did not try to guess everything at once. I did not build a dramatic picture in my head. I simply asked myself one question. What changed so much that my daughter could not say this out loud? I found a plain envelope in a drawer. I slid the packet inside. I wrote a date on the front with a calm hand. I put it in the back of a kitchen cabinet, behind things I rarely touch. Then I sat down and tried to breathe normally. I kept thinking about Lena's eyes. She had smiled for the room. But when she looked at me, it was different. It was not the look of a bride enjoying attention. It was the look of someone who wanted a door to open. I started going back in my mind. I did not start with the wedding. I started months earlier when Lena first told me she met Ashton. She met him through a charity project connected to his company. Lena worked in event planning at the time. She was proud of that job. She liked doing things that made people feel seen. She told me Ashton was confident and kind. She said he listened. I remember feeling cautious, but I kept it to myself. Lena was an adult. I did not want to act like she needed permission. At first, things looked normal. He took her to nice dinners, he sent flowers, he invited her to events where everyone dressed well and spoke carefully. Lena told me it was exciting. She said it felt like stepping into a bigger world. I told her to enjoy it, but to keep her feet on the ground. Then the pace changed. Ashton talked about the future very fast. He spoke about commitment as if it was a project with a deadline. Lena would call me less, but she always had a reason. She said she was busy. She said she had meetings. She said she was traveling. When I did see her, it was often in public places where Ashton or his people could appear at any moment. If I suggested coffee near my house, she said it was too far. If I suggested dinner alone, she said her schedule was tight. I accepted it at first. I told myself young couples get wrapped up in each other. That is normal. But then I noticed something small. When Lena spoke about Ashton, she spoke like she was reading a summary. She would describe what he achieved, who he knew, what his plans were. She spoke less about how she felt. If I asked personal questions, she would glance at her phone and change the subject. I saw Ashton's mother, Marisol, more often than I expected. She would call Sandra and speak about the wedding as if it was a public campaign. She would send lists and schedules. She would talk about the guest list in numbers, not in names. When she spoke to me, she was polite, but she kept reminding me what was best for Lena's future. She said Lena needed stability and strong leadership around her. She said families like theirs had standards. At a rehearsal dinner a few days before the wedding, the pattern became clearer. The restaurant was expensive and loud. People raised glasses and told stories. When I tried to talk to Lena, Ashton's friends kept stepping into the space. They asked me about my job with a smile that felt sharp. They spoke about big money, big plans, and big influence. They laughed when I said I worked in compliance. One of them said my work sounded like paper and rules. I told him rules matter. During dinner, Marisol guided every part of the evening. She told the staff when to bring food. She told people when to stand. She told the photographer where to point the camera. When Lena tried to speak, Marisol would touch her arm lightly and redirect her with a smile. Lena always stopped. Every time. After that dinner, I tried to call Lena. She did not answer. Later, she sent a short message saying she was tired and needed rest. The words looked like her, but they felt too clean, too careful. I told myself not to assume the worst. At the same time, I could not ignore the growing gap. I asked Sandra if she noticed anything. She told me I was overthinking. She said Lena was finally getting the life she deserved. She said I should be grateful and stop acting like I could compete with Ashton's world. I told her I was not competing. I was a father. Sandra told me fathers need to know their place sometimes. I did not respond to that. I just listened and stored it away. The next day, I met Lena's friend Nina for coffee. Nina asked if I thought Lena looked stressed. I told her yes. Nina said Lena had changed. Nina said Lena stopped meeting friends alone. Nina said Lena always had someone nearby now, even when it was not needed. Nina said she felt like Lena was being managed. I asked Nina if Lena ever spoke directly about fear. Nina said Lena did not use that word, but she hinted. Nina said Lena once said she had to be careful because people were watching. Nina said Lena asked strange questions, like how to keep a private conversation private. Nina said she wanted to help, but did not know how. When Nina said that, I felt the same pressure I felt in the ballroom. Not panic, not anger, just clarity. I understood that if Lena could not speak freely, then emotions would not fix this. A direct confrontation would only close doors faster. That night in my kitchen, I opened a notebook and wrote down dates. I wrote down the rehearsal dinner. I wrote down the times Lena did not answer. I wrote down the moments when staff blocked me at the hotel. I did not decorate it with feelings. I kept it simple and clean. Then I sat quietly and thought about the note again. I realized something. Lena did not ask me to argue. She did not ask me to shout. She asked me to rescue her. That meant she believed I could do it, but only if I stayed calm. So I made myself a promise. I would not move fast. I would not speak to the wrong person. I would not let them paint me as a problem. I would watch, listen, and prepare, the same way I do at work when a risk is hidden under a perfect report. 2 days after the wedding, I tried to see Lena in person. I did not call first. I did not want anyone to prepare a scene. I drove to her new condo in the early afternoon when the lobby would be quiet. The building looked like a magazine cover. Smooth glass, bright lights, fresh flowers at the front desk. A guard stood near the elevators. He did not look angry. He looked trained. I told the desk I was Lena's father, and I wanted to drop off something small. The woman at the desk smiled and asked for my name. When I gave it, she checked a screen and paused for a second too long. Then she said Lena was not available and could not receive visitors without prior approval. She said she could take my item and pass it along. I asked if she could call Lena and confirm. She said Lena had requested privacy. She said it was for her comfort. Her words were polite, but her tone was firm. The guard shifted closer without stepping forward. I could feel the message. I was not welcome, even in a public lobby. I thanked her and stepped aside. I did not argue. I sat in a chair near a tall plant and watched the room. I watched who came in and who went out. After 15 minutes, I saw a man I recognized from the wedding. He was one of Ashton's staff. He entered with confidence, spoke to the desk, and went straight to the elevator. No one stopped him. No one asked for approval. That told me what I needed to know. This was not about privacy. This was about control. I left the building and waited in my car for a short time. I told myself I was not following anyone. I was simply staying close in case Lena needed a safe face. I kept my hands on the steering wheel and watched the entrance. A little later, a black car pulled up. 2 people stepped out first, like they were checking the space. Then Lena appeared. She looked put together, as always, but her movements were small and careful. She did not walk like someone going to lunch. She walked like someone being guided through a narrow hallway. One of the people stayed close to her shoulder. They spoke to her, and she nodded without looking up. I got out of my car slowly and walked toward them with an easy pace. I did not call her name loudly. I did not want a scene. I simply approached and raised my hand in a calm greeting. For a second, Lena's eyes met mine. Her face changed. The bright public look dropped. Then she lifted it again quickly when the person beside her leaned in. She said softly that she could not talk. She said she was in a hurry. The words sounded practiced, like something she had rehearsed. I asked if she was okay. She said she was fine, but her voice did not match her eyes. The person beside her told me Lena had appointments and everything was planned. He said I should coordinate through proper channels. He spoke like I was a vendor who missed a meeting. I asked him who he was. He said he was helping the family with scheduling and security. I told him I only needed 1 minute with my daughter, alone. He said that was not possible. He said Lena needed calm and not pressure. He said everyone was doing what was best for her. Lena kept her eyes on the ground. Her fingers moved against the strap of her bag like she was counting. Then she looked at me again for a brief moment. It was small, but I saw it. It was the same fear from the dance. She said she was sorry. She said she would call me soon. Then she stepped into the car. As the door closed, she turned her face toward the window. Her lips moved slightly, like she was trying to say something without sound. I did not chase the car. I did not knock on the window. I stood still and let it leave. When I sat back in my car, I felt my mind settle into a clear shape. I was not confused anymore. I was not guessing. I understood that a direct talk would be blocked every time. I drove home and went straight to my kitchen table. I opened my notebook and wrote down what happened. I wrote the time I arrived. I wrote the words the desk used. I wrote the name of the staff member I recognized. I wrote what the security helper said about proper channels. I kept it plain. No feelings. Just facts. Then I called Nina. I asked if she had heard from Lena. Nina said Lena had been quiet and hard to reach. Nina said Lena sent short messages that did not sound like her. Nina said Lena kept saying she was busy and everything was fine. Nina said she did not believe it. I asked Nina if Lena mentioned anything specific lately. Nina hesitated, then said Lena once hinted that she was being pushed to sign something quickly. Nina said Lena did not explain, but she sounded stressed. Nina said Lena used the words, "It has to happen this week." Nina said Lena asked if Nina knew any way to delay a process without causing a fight. I thanked Nina and told her to stay calm. I told her not to confront anyone. I asked her to keep every message and note the times. Nina said she understood. After that, I called a colleague from the bank, Eli. He is a risk officer. He speaks in quiet sentences, and he likes clear rules. I did not tell him everything. I asked him general questions about what banks do when they suspect a person is under pressure. I asked what steps exist to confirm someone is acting freely. Eli did not give me a dramatic answer. He said banks look for clear consent, consistent contact, and independent advice when needed. He said timing matters. He said written records matter. He told me to speak to a lawyer if family money or contracts were involved. He also reminded me to stay inside proper boundaries. That was exactly what I planned to do. I called attorney Paula Finch next. I knew of her through work. She had a reputation for being careful and calm. I asked if she could meet me for a private consult. I did not give details on the phone. I simply said it involved my adult child, pressure, and financial risk. She said she could see me the next morning. That night, I did not sleep well. I did not pace around the house. I did not send angry messages. I sat in my home office and organized what I had. I created a simple folder. I labeled it with Lena's name and the month. Inside, I placed the note, my timeline pages, and a list of people connected to Ashton's circle. I wrote down the locations where I had been blocked. I wrote down the names of staff when I had them. I also opened my calendar and marked the upcoming foundation meeting Nina mentioned. I did not know yet what I would do there. I only knew this. The people around Ashton respected titles, meetings, and process. If Lena needed a rescue, it would not come from shouting. It would come from the systems they trusted, turned the right way, at the right time. The next morning, I met attorney Paula Finch in a small office above a quiet street. The waiting room smelled like paper and coffee. Nothing in that place tried to impress anyone. I liked that. Paula greeted me with a calm face and asked me to start from the beginning. I told her I was not there to make noise. I told her I wanted to keep my daughter safe and keep everything clean. I handed her my notebook, but I did not let it turn into a performance. I simply explained what I saw, what I heard, and what changed over time. Paula read my notes slowly. She did not react the way people at the wedding reacted. She did not praise Ashton. She did not tell me to be grateful. She asked simple questions. She asked who blocked my access, how often, and in what words. She asked what Lena's normal habits used to be. She asked what Lena wrote in the note. She asked if I had anything else from Lena that felt direct and personal. I told her about the short messages that did not sound like my daughter. I told her about the condo lobby and the helper who spoke for Lena. I told her about how Lena's eyes changed when she thought no one was watching. Paula said something that helped me. She said I did not need a dramatic story. I needed a clear record. She said if someone is being managed, the pattern is often the proof. She said my job was to keep building a timeline, keep copies of communications, and avoid emotional traps. She warned me not to confront Ashton or his family in public. She said a public confrontation could be used to label me as unstable. She said people with money often win the first story even when it is not true. She said my goal should be to get Lena a private space where she can speak freely, with proper support around her. Paula also told me to think about the practical side. She asked where Lena lived, who had access to her building, who handled her schedule, and who controlled her phone. She asked if Lena had independent money, or if everything was tied to Ashton's circle. I told her I did not know the full picture. Paula said that was normal. She said we would not guess. We would verify, step by step, through the systems that exist for these situations. Before I left, Paula told me to keep my tone calm in every message. She said, short and polite communication is safer than long emotional paragraphs. She said, if I had to ask for a private meeting with Lena, I should ask in a way that sounds normal and respectful. She said, I should also keep Nina close, because friends sometimes see what family misses. After the meeting, I drove to a coffee shop near the river and met Nina. Nina arrived early and chose a table where she could see the door. She looked tired. She told me she had not slept well since the wedding. Nina showed me her phone. She did not hand it to me right away. She asked me to promise I would not do anything reckless. I told her I would not. I told her I only wanted to understand what was happening. She scrolled through messages from Lena. The words were polite and clean. Lena kept saying she was busy. Lena kept saying everything was fine. Nina said Lena never wrote like that before. Nina said Lena used to write in short, warm sentences with small jokes and details. These new messages had no details at all. Nina also told me something else. She said Lena had tried to set up a short meeting after the wedding, but the meeting kept getting moved. Each time, a new reason appeared. Nina said Lena sounded more stressed each time. Nina said Lena once wrote that she felt like she could not breathe in her own life. Nina said Lena deleted that message a minute later. I did not ask Nina to send me anything yet. I did not want to create extra risk for her. I simply wrote down the dates and times Nina remembered. I asked Nina to keep everything saved and not to talk about it in group chats. Nina agreed. When I left the coffee shop, I did not feel relief. I felt direction. I was not alone in what I was seeing. Nina's view matched mine. That matters, because patterns are stronger when two people notice the same shape from different angles. That afternoon, I went to the bank branch and met Eli in a small conference room. Eli is not emotional. He does not do drama. That is why I trusted him with careful questions. I told Eli I was dealing with a family situation where someone might not be acting freely. I did not use names. I asked what banks and institutions look for when consent might be influenced. Eli said the first thing is consistency. He said if someone's behavior changes sharply, it raises a flag. He said the second thing is independence. He said people need private access to advice when big decisions are involved. He said the third thing is time. He said rushed decisions are often the sign of pressure from the outside. Eli said something else too. He said careful notes matter, even when they feel boring. He said dates, times, and exact words are more useful than opinions. He told me I was doing the right thing by writing everything down. I thanked him and left. On the drive home, I kept thinking about one part of my day. Paula said people like Ashton's family win the first story. Nina's messages showed how the first story gets built. Eli's words reminded me that institutions do not respond to feelings. They respond to patterns and proof. 2 days later, there was a foundation session connected to Ashton's world. I had been invited as family, but the event was clearly business. It was in a clean boardroom with glass walls and bright lights. People greeted each other with smiles that did not reach their eyes. Lena was there. She sat beside Ashton like an accessory. She smiled when people looked at her. When they looked away, her face went still. Ashton spoke for both of them most of the time. He used words like partnership and values. People nodded like they were approving a plan, not a marriage. Marisol moved through the room like a manager. She guided who spoke and when. She praised Ashton often, and she praised Lena only when it helped Ashton's image. Parker, the public relations man, stayed close to the edge and watched phones and cameras. I kept my place and stayed calm. I did not try to pull Lena aside. I did not make a scene. I watched for small signals. I noticed Lena's hands under the table. I noticed how she looked toward the door when Ashton leaned closer to speak to her. I noticed that she never stood alone, not even for a minute. When the session ended, Marisol spoke to me in a sweet tone and said Lena was very busy now. She said I should be proud and let the new family lead. I told her I was always proud of my daughter. I also told her I would always be available to Lena directly. Marisol's smile stayed in place, but her eyes cooled for a second. Then she turned away as if I had not said anything important. That evening I went home and added new notes to my timeline. I did not write that I felt hurt. I wrote what was said, who was present, and how Lena behaved when eyes were on her and when eyes were not. Then I placed the notebook back in my folder and turned off the light, steady and quiet. Like this was work I had to finish properly. Over the next week, I kept my life normal on the outside. I went to work. I answered emails. I paid bills. I did not post anything online. I did not send long messages to Ashton's family. I did not try to win a shouting match I was never invited to. Inside, everything became very focused. I met attorney Paula Finch again in her office. She did not ask me how I felt first. She asked what changed since our last meeting. I told her about the condo lobby, the car, and the way Lena spoke like someone was standing beside her. I told her about the foundation session and how Lena was never alone. Paula nodded and said the next step was not a confrontation. The next step was to create a safe lane for Lena to speak freely and to prepare the right people to hear it. Paula also reminded me that clean steps matter. She told me to keep my words short and polite in writing. She told me to avoid emotional language that could be used against me. She told me to choose one public moment where the people around Ashton could not quietly erase the issue. She said the key was not to shame anyone. The key was to stop the pressure and secure Lena's independence. That same day, I spoke with Nina again. We met in the same coffee shop near the river. Nina looked more determined than before. She said Lena had started sending messages that felt like signals. Not full sentences, just small hints, like she was trying to confirm Nina was still safe to contact. Nina said Lena mentioned a gala and called it important. Nina said Lena also wrote that she could not refuse certain things anymore. Nina said Lena wrote that she needed a way out that looked normal. Then Lena stopped messaging for hours. I told Nina not to take risks. I told her to keep her phone locked and avoid group chats. I told her to keep copies of messages and note the time they arrived. I asked if she could help Lena get a simple backup phone, something that would not link to the usual accounts. Nina said she could, but only if it was done carefully. I told her to do it through my sister Rosa, so Nina would not be the only bridge. Rosa agreed right away. She is practical and steady. She does not panic. She told me she would keep everything quiet and she would not talk to Sandra or anyone connected to Ashton. She said if Lena needed a safe door, she would hold it open. I also spoke with Eli at the bank again. This time I used clearer language. I still did not turn it into a dramatic story, but I told him the situation involved a young adult who might be under pressure around financial decisions. Eli said the bank's job is to confirm consent and protect against manipulation. He said the best path is to make sure the person has independent advice and time to think. He told me to avoid surprises that could look like control from my side. He told me to keep my actions clean and easy to explain. I understood that. I was not trying to control Lena. I was trying to give her room to breathe. A few days later, an email invitation arrived for the gala. It was from Parker, the public relations man. The message was polite and full of small rules. It listed where guests should enter, when photos would happen, and how speeches would be handled. My seat was listed under general seating. It felt like the wedding all over again. I replied with a short message. I thanked him for the details and said I would attend. I also asked, politely, if there would be a quiet space available for family members to speak privately before the event. I did not explain why. I did not accuse anyone. I simply asked. Parker replied fast. He said the schedule was very tight and that all discussions would happen after the main program. He said the event was about the foundation and investors, not private family matters. He ended by saying the best way to support Lena was to be positive and let the evening run smoothly. That answer told me something. They were not afraid of my emotions. They were afraid of a private conversation. I printed the gala schedule and placed it in my folder. I did not highlight it. I did not write angry notes on it. I simply noted times and locations. I marked the moment when Lena would be on stage beside Ashton. I marked the time when guests would move between the main hall and the side lounge. I marked where security would be positioned based on the venue map I found online. Paula told me to prepare a short statement for myself, not for the crowd, but for my own calm. A few lines that explained why I was there and what I wanted. I wrote it on a small card and kept it in my wallet. It was simple. It said I was there to protect Lena's ability to choose freely, and that I would follow proper process. I also prepared a second folder separate from my timeline notes. It was thinner. It contained only what I might need to identify key people and key moments, names, dates, and contact information. Nothing dramatic, nothing that could be misread as a threat. Just the basics, like a clean checklist. During that week, Sandra called me twice. She said I was acting distant. She said I was making people nervous. She said Ashton's family thought I was trying to ruin Lena's new life. I told Sandra I was not trying to ruin anything. I told her I was trying to speak to our daughter privately. Sandra said Lena was busy and happy, and I should stop looking for problems. I told her I would always be available to Lena, even if people did not like it. Sandra ended the call with a tight voice. I did not argue. I did not try to convince her. I had learned that some people choose comfort over truth until truth becomes unavoidable. 2 nights before the gala, Nina sent me a message saying Lena had the backup phone. Nina said Lena only used it for seconds at a time. Nina said Lena was scared, but she was trying. That same night, Lena sent a short message to that phone. She said she could not talk long. She said she needed me at the gala. She said she would try to be near the side lounge after the main program. Then the message stopped. I did not reply with questions. I replied with one line. I said I understood. I said she was not alone. The day of the gala, I dressed simply. A dark suit, plain tie, clean shoes. I did not try to match Ashton's world. I did not try to look rich. I only needed to look steady. Before I left, I stood in my kitchen for a minute and looked at my folder on the table. The house was quiet. My hands were calm. My mind was clear. I put the folder into my briefcase, checked my phone battery, and drove to the venue with one goal in mind. I was going to handle it the right way, through the systems they respected, with Lena's safety as the only center point. The gala hall looked even brighter than the wedding. Soft lights, cameras, and people who spoke in calm voices while watching each other. A host stood near the stage. Staff moved with small earpieces and practiced smiles. Parker was already working the room, guiding phones and angles like a traffic officer. I entered through the main doors because that was what the invitation required. A staff member checked my name and pointed me toward general seating. I thanked her and walked slowly. I did not scan the room like a nervous man. I scanned it like a professional who needs to understand a system. I saw Lena near the front, beside Ashton. She wore a perfect look, like the wedding, but her posture was tight. She did not lean toward him. She held her hands together like she was trying to stay still. Ashton spoke with investors and donors. He smiled and touched shoulders. Marisol stood close, greeting people and guiding conversations. When she saw me, she smiled in a smooth way and said she was glad I came. Her tone said I should be thankful for the invitation. I nodded and said I was there to support my daughter. The program began. The host talked about the foundation and the future. Applause came on cue. Ashton walked to the stage and started his speech. He talked about growth, values, and family. He spoke as if everything was steady and simple. People nodded as if they were watching a plan succeed. Lena stood beside him with a small smile. When cameras turned toward her, she lifted her chin. When the cameras moved away, her face went flat again. I waited until the moment the host invited family remarks. That part was listed as a small pause in the printed schedule. I stood when my name was called, because if I stayed seated, they would move on and tell the room I chose silence. I walked to the side of the stage, not into the spotlight. I kept my hands visible and my voice low. I said I was not there to argue. I said I had a serious concern about whether Lena was being given private space to make her own choices. I said I had taken advice on how to handle it properly, and I was asking for a short pause so the right people could do their jobs. Parker's face changed for half a second. Marisol took one step forward, then stopped. Ashton's smile stayed in place, but his eyes tightened. The host tried to smooth it over. He said this was not part of the plan. I told him I understood, and I said the concern was not personal. I said it was procedural, and it involved financial decisions connected to the foundation and the couple's public role. That got attention. In rooms like this, people may ignore feelings, but they do not ignore risk. Eli was there, standing near the side aisle. He did not look at me like a friend. He looked at me like a bank officer who has to follow policy. He stepped forward and spoke quietly to the host. He said the bank had a duty to confirm consent when certain conditions appear. He said the safest step was to pause any linked actions until the person involved could speak freely with independent support. A man in a dark suit, who I later learned was part of the investor group's compliance team, joined him. He said the investors could not proceed with new commitments if there was a question about pressure or misrepresentation. He said they needed clarification, documented properly, and they needed it immediately. Ashton tried to take control of the moment. He said everything was fine and that I was overreacting. He said Lena was happy and that I was being dramatic. I kept my face calm and said I was not asking anyone to believe me. I said I was asking Lena, privately, to speak for herself with no handlers and no schedule pressure. Marisol spoke next, still polite. She said Lena was tired and that I should not put her on the spot. She said this was not the time. I said this was exactly the time because this room was full of people who respect rules, not rumors. Then Lena moved. She stepped slightly away from Ashton. It was a small distance, but it broke the picture. Her hands shook once, then she pressed them together. She looked at me, then at Eli, then at the compliance man. She asked, in a quiet voice, for a private room and for Nina to be present. Nina appeared from the side lounge doorway. Rosa was behind her. They did not rush. They simply stood where Lena could see them. The host signaled staff, and a side door opened. 2 venue managers guided Lena toward the lounge. Ashton tried to follow. The compliance man held up a hand and said the conversation would be private and documented properly. Eli said the bank would pause any linked transfers or access until Lena confirmed her decisions freely. Ashton's smile finally dropped. He said he had a right to be there. Eli replied that rights do not override consent verification. The words were calm, but the meaning was hard. Marisol started speaking fast to Parker. Parker typed on his phone with stiff fingers. I could see people in the front row turning their chairs slightly, watching without hiding it now. A few donors stepped back as if distance could protect them from the situation. 10 minutes later, the investor compliance man returned to the hall. He spoke quietly to the host and then faced Ashton. He said, with a flat tone, that the investor group was suspending the announcement and scheduling an urgent review. He said they would not attach their name to anything until the consent and governance questions were resolved. Eli walked to Ashton and asked for his access badge for the bank-linked lounge area. Ashton hesitated. Eli repeated the request, the same way he would repeat a policy instruction to any client. Ashton handed it over. Lena came back into view with Rosa beside her and Nina close behind. Her face looked pale, but her eyes looked clearer than they had in months. She did not look at Ashton. She walked straight to me and took my arm. I did not smile for the room. I did not raise my voice. I simply guided her toward the elevator lobby. Behind us, the hall stayed bright and quiet, the way expensive rooms get when the picture breaks. The host stood frozen with his card in his hand. Parker kept typing. Marisol stood with her shoulders tight, as if she was trying to hold the story together by force. The elevator doors opened. Lena stepped in first. I stepped in after her. Rosa and Nina followed. As the doors closed, I saw Ashton standing in the light, alone on the edge of his own stage, with no speech left to give.